Russian authorities are claiming that Vladimir Putin's most prominent critic has reportedly died in jail following his years-long battle against the Kremlin that led to his arrest, his prosecution, a poisoning attempt that he survived, and then ultimately what may have been his life-ending jail sentence. As global leaders decried this news, Republican frontrunner Donald Trump remained conspicuously silent, something my next guest pointed out, tweeting in part, "Let Navalny's death be a warning to America. If returned to power, Donald Trump will jail his opponents. This isn't a forecast. He has already told us this." Joining me on set is Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He's a member of the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees, as well as a former impeachment manager in the second impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. I am speechless. When you and I just watched this right now, you and I both just were speechless. Talk about why, when you and I and others say that we're not being hyperbolic about what Donald Trump is promising America should he get a second term, that it's real. That is, there's a reason why we keep on standing every day and ringing these alarm bells.
You and I look at a dictator like Vladimir Putin, and we see a ruthless man, and Donald Trump sees a mirror. He sees a role model, and he likes Putin. Putin likes Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has said that he will go on this retribution tour. He'll be a dictator when he comes into office. And in fact, what is so perverted, he's now saying that he's Navalny, and his supporters are claiming that Trump is Navalny, when in fact it's not a coincidence at all that in the same week that Donald Trump invited Russia to attack NATO, that Mike Johnson refuses to pass the Senate's Ukraine aid, and a journalist in Tucker Carlson goes over and interviews Putin and doesn't ask him at all about Navalny, that Putin would do this. It's not a coincidence. It's a green light that Putin saw, and it's just a question now, do we care?
And we've heard directly from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about what his people are suffering because of the ruthlessness you talk about with Vladimir Putin. Do you think Putin is now emboldened when he sees the chaos that is this 118th Congress, the fact that aid cannot be agreed upon, and the fact that the United States looks like it's just going to stand aside, and then you have Donald Trump saying that NATO doesn't really have any value or benefit to the United States?
Yes, this is a tipping point right now for Ukraine, and we saw just today that they are retreating from an area that they had taken over because they are about to be encircled. And so Ukrainian members of parliament are reaching out to me as recently as yesterday asking, are you really going to walk away from this? Are you really not going to fund us? And what happens is, if you're on the front lines at the line of contact, in the Donbas, and you don't have bullets, you don't have water, you don't have, first aid kits, morale is going to break down. And they're willing to fight for their country, but they need the resources. And again, we can't fool ourselves. That fight will come to us if Ukraine falls.
And so that aid is being held hostage by Republicans in the House. And part of the problem is they can't seem to walk and chew gum at the same time while we're dealing with aid packages not only to Ukraine and Israel and other nations. We're looking as Americans at another looming government shutdown on March 1st. These temporary Band-Aids, Eric, they're a problem. They're just Band-Aids on a hemorrhaging wound. March 1st is right around the corner. Is it just going to be yet another continuing resolution, do you think?
We're governing crisis to crisis, and that's because it's not that they can't walk and chew gum. They can't walk and follow Trump at the same time. So they have to do what Donald Trump wants them to do. They're a law firm in the House that just works for one client, Donald Trump. He doesn't want funding for Ukraine, wants to sabotage the border, doesn't want us to fund the government at all because they want to shut down the government because they think it makes Biden look bad. NASA just laid off a bunch of its best scientists because they don't have certainty in their funding. And so, yes, it is chaotic. What Hakeem Jeffries has shown and what House Democrats have shown, I think Joe Biden has shown, is competence, that we want to get things done, that we want to govern, they want to ruin.
Yeah, and you've talked before with me about competence versus chaos and what it could deliver to the American people. Is that what is at stake? We talk in journalism terms about let's not focus on the odds anymore because these polls, they can come and go and the odds can be different. But the stakes are what really count. Is that the same thing that's happening right now in D.C.?
And that's, yes, and that's what we need to make this upcoming election about. It's not about two individuals. I'll take the individual who's 81 over the guy who was 91 felony counts. It's not about two individuals. It's about the idea of competence versus chaos, or even greater, freedom versus fascism. If we make it about those ideas and what they mean in our daily lives, we're going to win.
And, you know, Congressman, I always like to remind people that you choose to serve as a public servant. You give up so much to be able to travel from California to D.C. And one of the things you do also is you actually expose yourself to personal harm on days like January 6th. It's been a crazy legal week, as it is every week. I joke that we're drinking from legal fire hoses. What got lost in the shuffle this week is your lawsuit. Can you talk a little bit about what happened?
I brought a suit with Capitol Hill police officers against Donald Trump for his role in January 6th and inciting the mob and aiming them at the Capitol. We won in the federal district court when Trump claimed immunity. We won in the Court of Appeals with a panel of judges unanimously, Republican-appointed and Democratic-appointed judges. Trump was taking it to the Supreme Court, and this week he dropped the lawsuit. So now we have a date with the judge coming up in a few weeks to set the trial schedule, and we'll go to discovery and deposition soon. And what we're seeing here, whether it's my case or E. Jean Carroll's case or in New York or the 4 different felony cases, is this tapestry of accountability that's finally coming together. And I think in the bigger sense, it's stitched together as a security blanket for our rule of law and our democracy.
I got less than a minute. I did have to ask you, have you seen where James Comer has gone? Because suddenly this week, after the news came out that that informant that the House GOP was relying so much upon for the Biden impeachment push was indicted by the feds for lying about bribes that were made to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. It's all a lie. And then James Comer suddenly has now decided that's really not the guy that we were going to hang our hat on.
Yeah, they've got nothing. They don't have
literally
the goods.
Nothing.
They've got nothing. This is a continuation of the insurrection. They've never accepted Biden as the president. Now they're trying to impeach him. They're trying to sabotage the border. And the best thing we can do, as I said, is lean in, play on their side of the field, go on offense, don't hide under the bed. We have nothing to hide about.